There are over 100 volcanoes scattered across Canada, yet most Canadians have no idea they're living in the shadow of potentially catastrophic volcanic threats. This is the story of why Mount Baker, a volcano that isn't even in Canada, poses the greatest volcanic danger to millions of Canadians. Right now, as you're listening to this, Mount Baker sits just 23 kilometers from the Canadian border. It's erupted 21 times in the last 10,000 years. Its last eruption was in 1843, and volcanologists know it's not a matter of if, but when it will erupt again. When it does, over 2 million people in Metro Vancouver could find themselves in the path of destruction. But here's what makes this even more unsettling. Canada has no dedicated volcano monitoring program. We're essentially relying on American scientists to warn us about our greatest volcanic threat. And despite having over 100 volcanoes within our borders and 49 volcanic fields that have been active in the past 10,000 years, most Canadians think volcanic eruptions are something that happens in other countries. Let me take you back to approximately 1775 to what became Canada's deadliest geological disaster. The Tseax Cone in Nisga'a territory erupted, and according to Indigenous oral histories, approximately 2,000 people died. This wasn't ancient history. This was around the same time as the American Revolution. Yet somehow, we've forgotten that Canada is volcanically active. The Geological Survey of Canada has identified 5 active volcanic areas in British Columbia alone. There's Mount Garibaldi, which some experts argue is Canada's most hazardous volcano because it's literally held together by glacial ice. As climate change melts these glaciers, the entire mountain could become destabilized. Then there's Mount Meaga, which in 2010 produced a 53 million cubic meter landslide, the largest in Canadian history. There was no warning. One moment the mountain was stable, the next millions of tons of rock were careening down the valley. But none of these compare to the threat posed by Mount Baker: natural resources. Canada's own assessment states that Mount Baker poses the greatest volcanic hazard to Canada. Why? Location, location, location. Mount Baker looms over the Fraser Valley, one of Canada's most densely populated regions. When it erupts, and history shows us it will, the immediate danger isn't just lava. It's lahars, those terrifying mixtures of volcanic debris and water that race down river valleys at highway speeds, obliterating everything in their path. The Fraser River system would become a superhighway for destruction, potentially reaching all the way to the Pacific Ocean. Then there's the ash. Just 1 millimeter of volcanic ash could shut down Vancouver International Airport for weeks. Think about that. 1 millimeter. That's thinner than a penny, but it would grind air travel to a halt. The economic impact, studies suggest it could exceed $10 billion. In 1975, Mount Baker gave us a preview of what could happen. Thermal activity increased dramatically, and steam emissions became so intense that authorities ordered evacuations. The volcano didn't erupt that time, but it sent a clear message: this sleeping giant could wake up at any moment. What's truly alarming is how unprepared we are. Emergency preparedness officials have acknowledged that we're not ready for a volcanic eruption in Canada. While we have comprehensive earthquake preparedness plans and tsunami warning systems, volcanic preparedness remains a glaring gap in our emergency management. The USGS Cascades Volcano Observatory monitors Mount Baker from the American side, but Canada's reliance on US monitoring for what could be our most devastating natural disaster is a source of ongoing controversy among experts. We spend significantly less on volcano monitoring than earthquake monitoring, despite the potentially catastrophic consequences. Dr. Glyn Williams-Jones from Simon Fraser University and other volcano experts have been sounding the alarm for years. They point out that the Cascade Arc, which includes Mount Baker, is one of the most dangerous volcanic regions in North America. We've seen what these volcanoes can do. Mount St. Helens in 1980 provided a terrifying demonstration of the power lurking beneath these peaks. But there's another element to this story that makes it even more complex. Mount Baker isn't the only Cascade volcano that threatens Canada. Mount Rainier, despite being further away, could also affect Canadian communities if it experienced a major eruption. Some experts argue we're focusing too much on Mount Baker while ignoring other potential threats. The Indigenous peoples of this region have long memories. Their oral histories accurately recorded volcanic eruptions centuries before European contact. They understood something we seem to have forgotten, that the mountains are alive and they demand respect. The Nisga'a people's stories of the Tseax Cone eruption were so detailed that modern scientists have been able to corroborate them with geological evidence. Here's what keeps volcanologists up at night. Climate change is adding a new dimension to volcanic hazards in Canada. As glaciers melt, volcanic peaks become destabilized. Mount Garibaldi and Mount Meager are particularly vulnerable. The 2010 Mount Meager landslide may have been just a preview of what climate change could trigger. In 2019, the government finally began installing enhanced monitoring systems at Mount Garibaldi. It was a start, but experts say it's not nearly enough. We need real-time monitoring on all potentially active volcanoes, comprehensive evacuation plans, and public education programs that treat volcanic hazards with the same seriousness as earthquakes. The economic implications are staggering. Vancouver is Canada's gateway to Asia, handling billions of dollars in trade annually. A major volcanic eruption could paralyze not just the city, but impact the entire Canadian economy. Whistler Blackcomb, one of North America's premier ski resorts, sits in the shadow of dormant volcanoes. The tourism industry, transportation networks, agriculture, all would be severely impacted. Recent developments offer some hope. Enhanced monitoring networks are being deployed in the Garibaldi volcanic belt. AI-powered early warning systems are under development. There's increased federal investment in volcanic risk assessment, and new volcanic hazard awareness programs have been launched in BC schools. Canada and the US have strengthened their joint monitoring agreements, recognizing that volcanic threats don't respect international borders. But we're still playing catch-up. Other volcanically active nations have dedicated volcano monitoring programs, specialized response teams, and populations that understand volcanic risks. In Canada, we've been lulled into complacency by 250 years without a volcanic eruption on our soil. The collaboration with First Nations communities offers a path forward. By integrating traditional knowledge with modern science, we can better understand the long-term patterns of volcanic activity in the region. Indigenous knowledge keepers have information that goes back millennia, far longer than our written scientific records. So what does all this mean for you? If you live in British Columbia, particularly in the Lower Mainland, you're living with volcanic risk whether you realize it or not. It's not about fear-mongering, it's about awareness and preparation. Just as we prepare for earthquakes, we need to understand and prepare for volcanic hazards. Mount Baker remains the greatest volcanic threat to Canada, not because it's the most likely to erupt, but because when it does erupt, it has the potential to impact the most people and cause the most economic damage. Its location, just 23 kilometers from our border, overlooking millions of Canadians, makes it a clear and present danger that we can no longer afford to ignore. The question isn't whether Canada will face a volcanic crisis. The question is whether we'll be ready when it happens. Right now, the answer is no. But with increased awareness, proper monitoring, and comprehensive planning, we can change that answer. We owe it to the 2,000 people who died at Tseax Cone, and to the millions who live in the shadow of these sleeping giants today to take volcanic threats seriously. Canada's volcanoes have been quiet for 250 years, but in geological time, that's just a heartbeat. The mountains are patient, but they won't sleep forever. The greatest volcanic threat to Canada isn't just Mount Baker, it's our own complacency in the face of inevitable natural forces that we've chosen to forget.